Welcome back to the Divij's Den podcast. This is episode 118. We are in the beautiful Zinc, Arkansas, which is just outside of Harrison, or in Harrison, I'm not quite sure, but I'm not good at geography as we just talked about. But I'm sitting here with Mr. Pastor Thomas Robb, who is the National Director of the Knights Party, aka the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK.
Well, I came out of respect for you and the broadcast here and your audience.
I want to preface this by letting you know that I come here, obviously in peace, of course, and I come here not to...
You didn't do the peace sign.
I come here in peace.
Okay.
And, I come here purely from an educational standpoint. I want to help my audience understand sort of your perspective.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you
your
simple
audience?
questions. It's a lot of entrepreneurs, people that are into their spirituality, Christians. That's typically, I'd say, who the audience members are. But it's growing every day, so
Yeah, good.
of all types of people.
Yeah.
But how are you doing?
Good.
We get started? Good. Awesome.
I could repeat what Kamala Harris said. I was raised in a middle-class neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about Kamala Harris? Let's go straight into
Because
that.
that's how she answered every question,
Yeah,
Maybe you didn't pay attention.
No, I paid attention.
Yeah.
She's very broad with her answers. She doesn't
Yeah.
really ever have a specific answer.
Yeah.
It's always like the...
I was
the
raised
other
middle-class neighborhood, every answer.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do I feel about her? She lost.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God. I'm very happy she lost. That's one thing we can't agree on.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was news that you passed away.
I did.
And you came back to life.
I guess.
That's crazy.
I saw a guy yesterday at Walmart. He walked through the front door and he said, "Thomas Robb, I thought you died." I said, "Well, no." He said, I heard you died." He said, "I really wanted to cry."
Yeah.
So-
Big fan.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're not dead.
Yeah. Now in Arkansas here, they would ask him, was there a bass boat, bass fishing boat?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they would ask in Arkansas, or the Ozarks?
What's that?
Went to heaven, was there a bass fishing boat? That'll be the first thing they'll be asking.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that phrase before.
Well, it's not a phrase. A bass fishing boat, fishing you, forget it.
I got it. Like you could be dead in the water. Is that what you're talking about?
Fishing is big around here, and
Yeah.
having a bass fishing boat to go bass fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went fishing. My girlfriend lives in the Bible Belt down in Mississippi, and I couldn't catch one fish.
Yeah.
Stood there for 2 hours. But her daughter was able to catch like 20 of them.
Yeah.
So something I need to work on. I heard about you from a couple different things. Obviously, you're all over the news and big in the media, but it was two things in particular. It was the billboard that went viral, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And the billboard said, "It's not racist to love your people." And I think it said White Pride Radio or
Right.
something like that. And then there was a second thing which went super viral, which was Nico Omalana, I think is his last name, who did the BBC interview with you, which obviously went crazy viral. I think it got like 40 million views on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that's how I originally found you.
He kind of pulled a fast one on me
For sure.
because I asked him specifically. It was a British broadcasting, and he said yes, and then I found out he had some other words behind the letters, and but the media is changing because normally in the past, when I've done interviews, especially from Europe, they have big boom mics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this guy is a little bit different, but maybe this new age, they'll just have one little camera like you guys here. You got three cameras, but
Yeah.
I thought, well, okay, British broadcasting, but it wasn't so much. But he was funny. People think I'm supposed to be upset about it. I've got a sense of humor. I can laugh at myself, and I thought it was he's a funny guy.
Super funny.
Yeah, I
For
thought
sure.
it was funny. I can take a joke. You're going to jump in the ring. Sometimes you're going to get slapped, and that's the way it goes.
Totally.
Yeah.
You didn't look too happy at the end though when he started walking off and he started making those more profound jokes, or if you want to call it that. Like you seemed like you were a little bit rubbed the wrong way.
Yeah, I can't remember what he was saying, but it was something that was. I can't remember what he was saying.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact words.
But it was almost on the edge of being
rude and disrespectful.
well beyond that, almost filthy.
Yeah.
Sexually filthy. I forget what it was, but I wasn't. I'm not going to engage in that type of banter.
Yeah, totally. What I did notice in that interview, because I was very, curious to see sort of what your personality was like, despite all the beliefs and ideologies and all that. And you seem to have a sense of humor. You seem like a goofy, fun guy.
Well, goofy maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy life. Absolutely.
What do you like to do? I'm just curious. Like when you're not sort of working and preaching here at the church, what are some of the things that you do in your spare time?
Watch the news.
Watch the okay. Yeah.
But I like I guess I like to travel some, but I don't do a lot of it. But we went to New England last year.
Oh, nice.
And we enjoyed that, my wife and I. And then this year we took it down to Hot Springs, spent a week down a little cabin on the lake down at Hot Springs. So I enjoy those things. Don't always get the chance to do it because they're expensive, you know. So I don't get the chance to do it all that much, but you know, I do it when I can. I like having my grandkids around and have my wife around, and I enjoy just day-to-day things. I don't have to go out and do anything super suspended to enjoy life.
Yeah, the simple things.
Yeah.
For me, it's family, faith, fitness. You know, those are the three most important things. I want to take it back, if you're comfortable. I'd love to understand more about your upbringing and kind of your childhood, and even if you're comfortable talking about your parents and how you were raised.
Sure.
I think that'd be an interesting way to kind of frame the audience to understand, you know, who you are today. So I guess the question is, what were your parents like? Like, how did they raise you?
My mom and dad were married for 65 years. Come from a very happy home. My mom and dad were Christians, and they surrounded themselves with Christians. Everybody that's in their circle of friends were Christian people, and they weren't snobby or that way towards other people, but the people they brought into their circle, which meant the circle that I and my brother would be involved in also, were always Christian people. And so I was surrounded in a Christian environment all through my whole life. And they're very conservative, patriotic. They would have been voting for Trump if they were alive. And I have two brothers, so one passed on now a couple years ago. But I was raised in a very happy home. That's
awesome. Yeah. You know, I don't come from a Christian family. My families they're Hindus. I'm the only Christian in my family as of now that I know of. But I have noticed my friends that I grew up in a Christian household. There seems to be these like two different perspectives, right? The one is the Christians that they go to church on Sunday and they praise the Lord, and then Monday comes and they're back into their worldly life, right? And then there's the other side of the Christians where they go to church and then Monday comes and they're living a Christ-like life every day.
That was my mom and dad.
Okay, so there we
go. I'm going to give you two examples. One is my dad sold insurance, one of his jobs he did. And one year, as a Christmas present, the head boss gave them all a bottle of champagne. My dad didn't know what it was. He got a present, brought it home, and he opened up those champagne. And he walked over to the sink in the bathroom, poked the cork, poured it down the drain. You know. And the next day, when he went to work, somebody said, "What do you think of the champagne he got? That was expensive champagne." My dad said, "I poured it down the drain." You know. So that was one of our. It goes back even further than that to my grandmother. And my grandfather died when I was little, so I don't know him. But my grandmother, she was engaged to a man. They were from Canada, and she was engaged to a man. And one day, one of her friends said, I don't know what his name was, okay? She never married him. And you understand the story. I'll call him Jim. And they said, somebody saw Jim in the bar last night. And she said, what? She said, how's Jim in the bar? So she confronted him about it. He said, well, yeah, but I wasn't drinking, but I was in the bar, but I wasn't drinking. She took off her engagement ring, handed it to him, and said, you will not be the father of my children.
Wow.
So they're very, but that sounds like maybe they're uppity, but they weren't. They weren't that kind of people, you know. But they still had standards, and they weren't going to cross the line.
Yeah, very interesting. But they had God was at the center of what they did, and if they felt like the worldly things that were happening in their life crossed those things, then they would have boundaries.
Correct.
Which is great. That's awesome. And when did you start to become, I guess, you know, interested in the religion and sort of like political world? Like, where did that initial interest start?
It was from my folks. They were very much involved.
Yeah.
I recall they were very much supportive of Joseph McCarthy. I don't know if that name means anything to you or not.
Sounds like an actor or something.
Well, he was a senator from the state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And probably if they would have had the internet in those days, he would have been more successful. But he the way I would interpret, he was going after the deep state. He was going after the globalists, so forth, that were in our state departments and so on. Look him up on the internet, Joseph McCarthy, because that's where they get the phrase McCarthyism from. I'm sure you heard that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's making a false accusation against somebody that, so he was supposedly tainting people for being communists or being fellow travelers and so on. And so they over several years, in fact, I knew his secretary. His secretary was actually, I knew her. Of course, she's been dead for many years now. And so they were supporting of Joseph McCarthy and other conservative, the phrase wasn't known, but Christian nationalists. Well, I guess Joe Logan Smith used that phrase, Christian nationalism. I don't know if you know who that is. But anyway, and so they were much involved in I might say, could call it extreme politics.
Okay.
But not extremist.
Right.
But extreme politics by the standard of people who, as far as I'm concerned, hate America.
Got it. So would you consider yourself today as an extremist?
I don't consider myself an extremist, but it depends on how a person would interpret that.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm opposed to taking out children, transgender a child, and by saying I'm opposed to that, to some that makes me an extremist. Okay, I don't consider that's extreme. I'm just saying no, you're not. Keep your hands off my kids or our children. So to some, yes, I'm extremist. There's a phrase that kind of fits into that. Truth is hate to those who hate the truth. So it's kind of the same thing, it kind of fits in there. I'm extreme to those who hate America. I would be considered an extremist.
Yeah. And do you remember as a child or a teenager or a young adult when you started to adopt these mindsets or ideologies?
12, 13 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So did you go to high school and college?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm just curious, like after you graduated college, what was that initial, like how did you begin your career?
Well, I went to a seminary in Colorado,
Okay.
a small school. It wasn't like Harvard. It was a small Christian school. I met my wife there. She had a similar raising background as well as I did. And so I went there, the intention of going into law, becoming an attorney, and then get involved in politics and make my effort in a political world, against what we consider the extremists on the other side. And I felt called to the ministry. And I hate to use that phrase because everybody's going to say that. Every preacher's going to say the same thing. Even those who disagree with me entirely, they're going to say they were called to the ministry. So I almost hate to say that because it's almost like a catchword that people say, "I'll call to the ministry." But nevertheless, I entered the ministry and got a Bachelor of Theology degree. And so when I came out of school there, my intention was to be politically active from the pulpit.
Got it. And when you joined the ministry, were you already a part of the Ku Klux Klan at the time?
No.
Okay.
That came later.
So I'm curious where that came from. Like, how did you get exposed to the Ku Klux Klan initially?
Running the circles of white nationalism, that just came about. And I knew David Duke, had known him for several years, before I joined the Knights, and I just felt that it gave us the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak. That we have a message we want people to hear, but so often it can't be heard because either those who espouse what I'm saying are afraid to be public, or they're totally ignored by the media, and so you can't ignore the Klan. And so if it wasn't for my Klan association, you probably wouldn't be here today.
So what I know about the Ku Klux Klan, based on my general knowledge,
is all wrong.
I appreciate that thought. But when I go to Wikipedia, for example, or any other, I know Wikipedia is not reputable, but you go to other sources, and the first thing it says is Christian extremism. It says the first terrorist organization in America, anti-black, anti-Jew, anti-Semitic, obviously, anti-Catholic, anti-gay. So these are all the things that I'm reading when I look up Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
But I've seen interviews where you're talking about the Ku Klux Klan, and it seems what your perspective is I'm just proud to be a white man in America.
Right.
And so I think there's a big disconnect there in what the world, I think, knows about the KKK versus your perspective. And so can you sort of talk about because I assume you understand the history of the KKK better than anybody else. But when I read things like black people being lynched, Jews, getting murdered, those the campfires where there's the fire. I don't know if it's called a campfire, but the fires where you're dressed in the hoods and you're running around it with the hand in the air. That's just how I see it. No disrespect.
No, I understand. That's okay.
So. Can you explain that to me?
I like the part we should run it around.
Yeah, maybe we could use a different choice.
Run across, like run across. That's okay. That's all humor in that. That's
I like to be funny.
These little cartoon little guys.
Yeah,
go ahead.
But the cross is on fire. You've got people in the hoods. That's what people know about the KKK. So can you break that down to me?
I can break that down. Maybe I'll do my best. But there's other things we did not mention that needs to be brought up there also.
Totally.
Is that the name Ku Klux Klan is public domain. So there's no one person or organization that owns the name. So literally, the gentleman over here decide, I like what Robb said today, I'm going to start my own clan. He could go home, have his wife make him a nice clan robe, and get double X, and
triple X.
And he could go out and declare himself the Grand Wizard of the KKK, and nobody can say, no, you're not. And then if he wanted to, he'd go announce to KY3, another TV station, newspapers in Springfield, tomorrow, if you wanted to, and say, I'm going to have a press conference. They'll come out there, and then he could say all kinds of crazy things. I hate this, I hate that, I hope they would lynch them all. And he can say all kinds of crazy things. And the headline is, Klan leader does da 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 da. Okay. So that's a baggage we deal with. And I'm aware of the baggage. I'm aware of these people out there, okay? I try to show respect to them because I try to feel, well, they're doing what they feel is best. They're maybe sincere. Yet part of me looking and say, these are a bunch of morons and idiots.
Is it sincere to murder black people?
Oh, no, I don't mean that. I mean saying stupid things. That's what I'm talking about. No, not. Well, they're probably sincere, but they were still wrong. Yeah. No, I'm just saying saying the crazy things and so forth. So we deal with that. And those type of people don't usually last very long. They come around and maybe a couple of years, they make some headlines in newspapers, but unfortunately they leave a stain that then we have to deal with for years. I feel, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that I could have been successful in any career I chose. And no matter what career in corporate America, I feel I could have succeeded in that career. I just feel called to this. And that's why we feel we are the most successful organization espousing our principles in the country.
Yeah. What are the principles of the Klan? Well,
I think principles of the Klan are love America and love our people. I think those are the two basic principles. And from that you can expand another thing. If you love your people, then you're going to be opposed to those who could degenerate your people, and you're going to be against those who are going to trans your people and so on. But there's nothing wrong with loving our people. And yet for somebody that's like me said, I love my people, they consider that almost hateful. And I've challenged people, and I'll challenge you, not that you're making this accusation, but I'll challenge you. In my 50, 60 years involved from a teenager to this very day, nobody can ever find one statement in all the interviews I've done, in all the articles I've written, in all the whatever, nobody can find one single time where I ever said I hated black people. Not that I've written, not that I said, or any other people. They've never found where I've said I've hated somebody because of their race. They won't find it.
How do you feel about black people?
Well, how do I feel about black people? I mean, there are two perspectives, There are guys who try to make a living, hopefully, and if I'm at a restaurant, they serve me up, hope they get my order right, as well as anybody else serving my food. I want to make sure this is done right. But I don't have any feeling like if I see a black man, like I want to go out and do him harm. I don't have that feeling. I don't feel it that way. But I do feel that I want to maintain our own identity. And so for that reason, we're called haters and bigots.
So, okay, I understand. So are you saying that when you say our people, are you referring to people of a white skin color? Is it about the skin color, or is it about people that were born in the United States? Or how do you define that?
Well, not necessarily skin color. You could take Asians, they look white, for the most part. So it isn't skin color, but they're who their ancestry is. We're European, and we feel European people have a right to exist and maintain our heritage and culture, and pass it on to our children without being labeled as a hater or a bigot. And some people will tell, well, you're a white supremacist. I don't care if somebody wants to tell me that white people are the most inferior people in the world. My attitude would be, so what? We still have a right to love our heritage. Mm-hmm. Even if we're the most inferior people in the world, we still have a right to love our heritage and culture and pass it down to our children.
And is it not possible to love your heritage but also love other heritages
absolutely.
as well?
Absolutely. I mean, you got mom and dad at home, right? Mm-hmm. Do you love your mom and dad?
Absolutely.
Do you love your mom and dad more than you love my mom and dad?
Absolutely.
All right. But it doesn't mean you hate my mom and dad. Right?
Yeah. Would you let my mom and dad in your church?
No.
Okay. So I think that's where the difference is. If we were to switch the roles and I had a church, my parents would definitely be there, but I would definitely let your parents come hang out too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the issue is why aren't you going to let my parents come hang out at your church?
Because we believe in separation. We want to maintain our culture and heritage and our identity. And when you bring people together, the racial barrier breaks down. History has shown that time and time again.
Yeah. So I want to visit the Bible. You're a Christian, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd love to read some verses. And by no means am I an expert, in the gospel or anything of that nature, but I do believe that the word is the fundamental of us as human beings. And so there's a couple verses that I want to bring up. The first one's in Genesis 1:27. It says, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them." And then Genesis 9:6 says, "The creation of humanity in God's image is the basis of human dignity and equality, as well as sanctity of life." There's Romans 2:11, which says, "God does not show favoritism." He wrote that God will repay each person according to what they have done. By implication, God would use the same standard whether a person was a Jew or a Gentile. And the last one I wanted to bring up was Galatians 3:28, which says there's neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ. And so I think my point of bringing these up, and I kind of just skimmed over them, is that, neither socioeconomic status nor biological status should be used as boundary markers. And I think the slightest notion of ethnic superiority, which it seems like is what the KKK believes in, would be a denial of the theological realities. And so I think that's where my head is at, is if we are all children of God, if we were all made in God's image, if, in the 10 Commandments, obviously, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt love thy neighbor, how does the viewpoints of the Ku Klux Klan align with the Bible? Because based on my understanding of the prejudice or my parents not being allowed to come in your church, it seems like there's not a respect of we're all made in God's image and we're all God's children. So I guess my point of all this is, would you say that the Ku Klux Klan's viewpoints are going against the Word of God?
Well, let me begin by saying that I had no inner need to convince you I'm right.
Totally.
Okay.
Agree to disagree, for sure, 100%.
Let me ask you a couple questions that relates to that. God made a covenant with who?
Abraham.
Yeah, and then Isaac,
Mm-hmm.
and then Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear about the Jews being God's chosen people. Do you think the Jews are God's chosen people?
I think we're all children of God.
No, but God chose Israel, the Jews, didn't
The
he?
Israelites, yeah.
Didn't he choose the Jews and protected them? Okay. So if you would turn against the Jews, would you be turning against God?
I would say if you turned against any ethnic group, you'd be turning against God.
How about the Jews?
I would say yes.
If you hated the Jews, like Hitler did, that'd make you an enemy of God, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And so we hear all the time of the Jews being God's chosen people, correct? So you agree with that? They're the chosen people.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, what if the Jews that we know of today are the true Jews? What if they're fake Jews?
Define fake Jew.
Some that don't have blood heritage of Abraham. See, the modern Jews today have no racial connection to ancient Israel. The Arthur Koestler, who was a Jewish historian, in about 1990, he wrote a book called The 13th Tribe. And in there he states that modern Jewry he said there's more Israelite blood in the Europeans than there is in modern Jewry. So I think that modern Israel or modern Jews are found in the European people, and I think the covenant God has with Abraham is still in effect. In fact, he tells us in Jeremiah that along the sun and the moon and the stars are in the heavens, he's going to keep that covenant. And so the whole integrity, the way I see it, the whole integrity of God is keeping the covenant he made with his people. And so all through the scripture, we find him maintaining that covenant. Now we jump into the verse you referred to here. Okay, and one of the mistakes that people quite often make, and I have no inner need to convince you I'm right, but one of the mistakes people make is that the word Gentile. Mostly people think the word Gentile means somebody who's not a Jew. But the word Gentile in the Hebrew and in the Greek doesn't mean non-Jew. It means somebody who is a heathen, or in the New Testament, especially out of the Commonwealth of Israel. And so the nation, or it means nations. So Israel was, when they went into, this is a history lesson for you perhaps, but when Israel went into captivity by the Assyrian and Babylonian empires back in the 7th century before Christ, there was 7 invasions of ancient Israel, and they were taken to captivity and migrated to Europe and became the nations of Europe. Even then, the Scottish Declaration of Independence acknowledges that, signed in 1320. And then even the name Britain, or British, means covenant people. So I do believe that God still has a covenant with his people and maintains that.
And I'm very happy that we're able to sit down here and have a respectful conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm not pranking you. This is not the BBC. This is my show.